Pause. Something shifted recently, didn't it? Not a dramatic epiphany, more like a quiet, irreversible click inside the mind. The noise of life kept moving, but the signals changed. The ad that used to inspire now feels like bait. The leader who once inspired now sounds like an actor reading lines. The friendships that felt warm now feel scripted. And beneath it all, a new discomfort. The sense that staying honest might mean standing alone. If that sentence landed like a hand on the shoulder, this is for the person who can't go back and knows it. Here's the first truth people don't say out loud. Awakening rarely begins as a victory march. It begins as loss. Loss of naive trust. Loss of crowded rooms that never asked who was actually in them. Loss of the comfort that comes from mistaking agreement for intimacy. It feels like betrayal because every story that made belonging easy was quietly removed, and what remained was a mirror and a choice. The mind tries bargaining. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe cynicism is clouding things. Maybe it's burnout. But that explanation always breaks down at the same point. The patterns don't unpattern. The phrases repeat across channels. The solutions sell the problem. The performances glow, but the wires are visible. And once seen, the strings don't stop being strings. The ancient thinkers didn't warn about this gently. Plato gave a parable, not a pep talk. The cave wasn't bad lighting. It was a way of life, the economy of shadows. People were not confused. They were invested. The cost of turning around wasn't intellectual. It was social. Exit meant exile. To stand up in a theater and whisper, "The screen is blank," isn't a correction. It's a violation of the ritual that makes people feel safe. Truth may be welcomed in principle, but only in the dosage that leaves the furniture unmoved. And yet there's a second, quieter truth. What looks like betrayal from the outside can be fidelity on the inside. Fidelity to what? To the fact that every time the body tightens around a lie, a person becomes a little harder, a bit less free, a shade more performative. Loyalty without truth devours its host. Modern life has professionalized performance. That's not conspiracy, it's competence. Incentives shape language. Language shapes perception. Perception shapes desire. Suddenly, value is whatever keeps attention fixed to the frame. Authenticity, meanwhile, becomes a brand adjective assigned to anything that performs realness credibly enough to sell. The result is a strange mental weather, saturated, lonely, hopeful, exhausted. If the mind is honest, it notices a different culprit than evil institutions. Fear. Not cowardice, fear. The social nervous system is old. For most of human history, exile was death. The body still interprets disapproval as danger. That's why small acts of honesty feel way bigger than they look on paper. Nietzsche had a blunt phrasing for this. Comfort makes herd morality feel like virtue. It isn't that people don't see, it's that they don't want to see alone. This is where awakening tilts into responsibility. It is tempting, in the first rush of clarity, to graduate from student to judge. The mind that learned to cut through illusions starts cutting through people. But the blade that protects truth can also amputate compassion. Machiavelli would warn against confusing moral intent with effective action. If the aim is to live freely and do some good, contempt is a poor tool. The goal is to become undeceived without becoming unkind. So what exactly is being awakened from? Not from life, but from mislabeling. From believing that power equals salvation. From believing that better data equals better meaning. From believing that outcomes justify identities. From believing that attention equals love. The insight is simple to say and difficult to live. Meaning cannot be outsourced without being diluted. Dietrich Bonhoeffer called it costly grace, freedom that doesn't waive responsibility but intensifies it. The price of freedom is not chaos, it's authorship. Here's an uncomfortable twist. Seeing through things can ruin a life if seeing becomes the whole life. Clarity is not a home. It's a window. Make a residency of negation and nothing grows. The paradox is obvious in hindsight. What begins as a commitment to reality can collapse into a habit of disbelief. Skepticism, unparented by purpose, matures into bitterness. Not every dance is propaganda. Not every ritual is a trap. Not every story is anesthesia. The world is not split into the duped and the awake. It's braided out of people who are half asleep in some places and wide-eyed in others. What then? There's a third path between performance and withdrawal. It looks less like revolution and more like craft. Think of a life as a workshop. In it, tools are chosen because they're true enough to use, not because they're fashionable to display. Plato would ask, which stories educate the soul? Nietzsche would add, which truths strengthen, not just deconstruct? Machiavelli would press, which moves actually work in the messy theater of human motives? Bonhoeffer would insist, which choices keep truth and love from filing for divorce? Here's a story. A man wakes early in a city that doesn't sleep, not because he is virtuous, but because he cannot. He walks before the sun, turns the buildings into mirrors. The early vendors know his face. No one knows his name. He used to be loud about his opinions. Now he is quiet, but sharper. When he buys bread, he looks at the hands that pass it. When he reads the verbs before the nouns. One morning, a young co-worker finds him in the stairwell and says, "How do you do it?" He is genuinely confused. Do what? Walk around like the noise isn't pulling you apart. The man answers carefully, like he's handling a glass. I lower the cost of being honest. Not everywhere, not with everyone, just enough places to build muscle. I gave myself fewer chances to betray myself for applause. I made rules I can keep on my worst day. I learned the difference between being seen and being sold. And I found one person I won't lie to me. He doesn't list the rest. That he schedules solitude like a meeting. That he turns strangers into neighbors by learning names. That he practices stating small truths gently until the big ones don't feel like violence. That he chooses one cause to serve and lets that service keep him from dissolving in a commentary. That he prays in a language he doesn't always believe in because it organizes his desire around something other than himself. It's not heroic. It's a toolkit. Reduce the number of situations that require self-betrayal. If a job pays in money but charges the conscience, the price compounds. Tell the truth at a dosage the nervous system can metabolize. Courage without calibration becomes theater. Replace outrage with craft. What is built silently can outlast what is shouted loudly. Trade generic belonging for specific covenant. Fewer people, stronger promises. Keep a daily practice that orients attention toward what cannot be monetized. Silence, nature, prayer, study, service. Choose a single lie one is done telling and retire it like a bad habit. Not all at once for real. Where's the philosophy? Everywhere. Plato in the courage to turn from shadows. Aristotle in the decision to make virtue into habit rather than mood. Epictetus in controlling what can be controlled with ruthless tenderness. Machiavelli in understanding that intentions don't erase consequences. Nietzsche in the refusal to hide behind borrowed values. Bonhoeffer in the insistence that truth separated from love becomes an idol that devours the worshiper. The most dangerous illusions are the ones that feel like love. Love of approval. Love of status disguised as love of excellence. Love of safety disguised as love of family. Love of cynicism disguised as love of truth. The mind is clever. The heart is literal. Tell it often enough that safety equals silence, and it will learn to bury the voice that could have saved a life, its own. But here is the mercy at the center of all this. Awakening is not a switch. It is a threshold crossed many times. It is entirely possible to be brave at noon and small at 5 p.m. This does not make a person hypocritical. It makes them human. The test isn't whether one never bows to the crowd again. The test is whether, after bowing, one remembers to stand up. A second story. A woman attends a holiday dinner and feels the familiar choreography begin. The jokes that cost too much to laugh at. The opinions that are less beliefs than passwords into the group. She takes a slow sip of water and chooses a small refusal. She doesn't perform dissent. She declines performance. After, in the kitchen, an aunt says, "You're different." This would have been an accusation once. Today, it is an observation. "I hope so," she answers. "I'd like to be worth trusting." That night she weeps, not because she regrets, but because doing a simple right thing still makes the animal body tremble like it survived a cliff. She doesn't shame the trembling. She thanks it for keeping her ancestors alive and tells it gently, "We are safe." This too is philosophy. It's stoicism with a nervous system. There's an idea that seems small and turns out to be everything. Quiet revolutions last longer. The world rewards spectacle because spectacle sells. But the soul doesn't keep score in views. It counts integrity in tiny coins. Kept promises, unglamorous disciplines, course corrections, apologies, the refusal to call cruelty honesty, the courage to call manipulation by its name without making it one's vocation. What about society? Must it all be left behind? The answer is more paradox than planned. A person who leaves completely becomes an artifact. A person who stays completely becomes a mask. The middle is an art, presence without absorption. Play the game without believing it is the world. Use the tools without letting the tools use the heart. Machiavelli nods here, not to scheming, but to lucid participation. Don't mistake the court for the kingdom. Don't mistake access for meaning. Don't mistake victory for virtue. There's another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the people left behind are not wrong. Awakening can breed superiority. It is a narcotic to feel like the last honest mind in a room. And superiority ruins intimacy faster than deceit. It contaminates it at the root. This is why compassion isn't optional. It is structural. To see clearly without learning to love better is to sharpen a blade with no handle. So what does loving better look like, concretely? It looks like curiosity where accusation would be easy. It looks like telling the truth about the price one is willing to pay, and then paying it without a sermon. It looks like accepting that most people will not change because of a point made, but some will change because of a person met. It looks like letting time do part of the teaching. It looks like refusing to turn people into symbols of trends. It looks like asking before speaking, am I trying to be free or trying to be superior? There is a sentence worth planting like a stake. Integrity is the only belonging that can't be taken. It can only be traded. Everything else, community, status, reputation, can be stolen or spoiled. Integrity cannot be stolen. It can only be sold. Some days it is sold for a little approval. Some days for silence at the table. Some days for a comfortable salary that buys 8 hours of self-abandonment. The accounting never asks for a confession. It just quietly totals up. If this all feels heavy, that's because it is, and because it matters. But heavy is not hopeless. The mind that woke up once can wake up again tomorrow. The mistakes that cost dignity can become tuition if the lesson is paid forward. The fear that once kept a person obedient can be repurposed into reverence, for truth, for kindness, for the fragile miracle of staying whole in a world that profits when people split. So what now? Not a manifesto, a practice. Here is a simple daily liturgy for the awake and the exhausted. Morning, one sentence of honesty written by hand. Not a paragraph, not a performance, just a sentence the soul recognizes as unedited real. Midday, one act that reduces dependence on approval. Small, visible only to the conscience. Evening, one question asked of the day. Where did I trade truth for comfort? Answered without punishment, noted without excuses. Every week, one conversation where listening is the point. Not to agree, not to correct, but to remain human. Every month, one decision aligned with values that cost something, but not everything, training the muscle without breaking the bone. Every season, one retreat from noise long enough to hear the signal again. Call it prayer, call it thinking, call it silence. The name is less important than the arrangement of attention. Here's the strange gift waiting on the other side of all this. Loneliness changes flavor. In the beginning, awake loneliness is deprivation, the ache of missing a shared dream. With time, it becomes spaciousness, the room to build a life that can be trusted from the inside. Shared illusions are replaced by specific alliances. There is less applause, more warmth. Fewer audiences, more witnesses. The circle shrinks. The roots deepen. Before this ends, one more twist that might save a person from despair. The world is not only asleep. It is also littered with people quietly waking up and thinking they're alone. They aren't. They just don't signal loudly, because signaling is the old religion. If honest work is done in the open, they will find it. If kindness is practiced without branding, they will feel it. If boundaries are kept without contempt, they will learn from it. The best arguments for truth are lives that don't need an argument. If the question remains, is it worth it? Answering honestly means admitting that some days it won't feel like it. Some days the old deal, belonging in exchange for performance, will glow with a comforting nostalgia. On those days, remember this. Feeling safe is not the same as being safe. Being applauded is not the same as being loved. Being surrounded is not the same as being seen. And betraying oneself is not the same as being loyal to others. So the door remains open, and there's a threshold. Crossing it is not dramatic. It sounds like a quiet sentence said without trembling. It looks like a small action done without witness. It feels like a body that relaxes one notch because it isn't pretending. On the other side of that door is not a club. It is a workshop, a garden, a path walked by people who would rather be honest and misunderstood than praised for a person who doesn't exist. If this reached the place in the chest that knows, take it as permission, not to shout but to begin. To begin again where performance once ended. To repair the bond with the only person guaranteed to walk through every door one opens, the one within. In time, someone will call it betrayal. Let them. The deeper word is birth. And if a single sentence must be carried forward, let it be this. Do not trade the truth that keeps a person whole for the story that keeps a person liked. The world may not thank such a person, but the future self will, and that gratitude lasts longer than applause. Now breathe. Tomorrow will still ask for a performance. But the script is optional. The soul is not.